So yeah, this is Uniqueness and Modesty, How Permissivists Can Live on the Edge by Darren Bradley, forthcoming in Mind. And yeah, I haven't read anything coming out of Mind in a while, so figured I'd read something out of Mind. As always, feel free to ask questions. Links in chat for the people that are here. It'll be in the show notes if you're watching later on the YouTubes. Yeah, Darren Bradley. All right. Introduction. Let's drop music even lower. Introduction. There is a divide in epistemology between those who think that, for any hypothesis instead of total evidence, there is a unique rational credence in that hypothesis, uniqueness, and those who think there can be many rational credences. Permissivism. Okay, so basically it says there is a way to add up thoughts. That's all this is saying. Like, this is just like the other one that says you can't add up happiness. This one's saying you can add up total beliefs, like to a number. So there is a number that you can add up. Again, you can't add thoughts together. How do you add up something that isn't a number? Can't do, like, it. You can do it. You can get assigned it a number, but like the idea that there is unique or permissive, like you're not even talking about the it's like I'm thinking of a number. Is it a unique number or are there many numbers? It doesn't fucking matter. I'm making it up. We're making up these numbers to assign. We are assigning numbers to our beliefs. Like, we have beliefs, but we can't, like, they don't come with numbers attached to them. So the idea that we're doing this is already, like, the idea that there are two positions on this. There is a unique number, or there are multiple numbers. It's, again, this is how we're assigning it. We're just assigning numbers to our thoughts. It doesn't, like, it's not like they come this way. Okay, because, I mean, tell me if my experience is wrong. Maybe I need to take more drugs, as Justin E. H. Smith was saying. But when I think of stuff, I don't think of it, oh, that's at 86.3% exactly. You know? Like, if I think something's more likely than not, I'm not like, oh yeah, that's at exactly 52%. That makes no sense. That no one does that. Like, come on. Okay. So, Skoltheis offers a novel and potentially devastating objection to permissivism on the ground that permissivism permits dominated credences. I will argue that permissivists can plausibly block Skoltheis' argument. One moral is that permissivism should be understood as a view about ideal rationality, not about non-ideal agents. Okay, so we're making up like fantasies here and about like what it actually is to think well versus the rest of humanity, which are non-ideal agents. All right, so Section 2 explains permissivism. Section 3 explains Skoltheis' argument. Section 4 explains how the permissivists can block the argument by holding that one should be uncertain which credences are permissible. Section 5 explains how the permissivists can block the argument by holding that one should be certain which credences are permissible. And 6 concludes. Cool. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about permissivism for a little while. Permissivism. Let's start with an example to motivate permissivism. Matt and Abby are members of a jury for a murder case. They have all the same evidence and review it separately. When they convene to discuss their conclusions, they discover that they disagree. Matt is confident that Jones is innocent. Abby is confident that Jones is guilty. When they learn of their disagreement, what do they discover about themselves? Clearly, they learn that one of them is confident in a falsehood. Either Jones is guilty or he isn't. But do they also learn that one of them has been less than fully rational, that one has failed properly to assimilate the evidence before him? The answer of no motivates permissivism. Permissivism, quote, given some set of total evidence, there are some hypotheses which do not have a unique rational credence, end quote. Permissivism has the pleasing result that we need not condemn either Matt or Abby as guilty of irrationality, but Skoltheis argues that permissivism is untenable. Clarification, that is. The author will exclusively be discussing credence, that is, probabilistic belief, focusing on the distinction between certainty, credence 1, and uncertainty, credence less than 1. Skoltheis talks about credence, but also live options, knowledge, and perhaps full belief. I think these concepts introduce complications which are orthogonal to the central issue of rationality, so I set them aside. Yeah, this is fine. If you're going to talk about people assigning numbers to their thoughts, which is generally what they're talking about when they're discussing credence, Then if you're you bring in all the other stuff, that's okay, like live options, because those aren't beliefs. You're talking about things in the options in the world. Knowledge is not your belief in this talk. In this area, when you say knowledge, you don't mean your beliefs. You mean things that are like for certain, and so that's like there's certainty there. And full belief means that you believe it wholeheartedly, I think, is that what it is. But like again, you're only talking about like relative credences here, so we're not talking about something more full. I'm not sure. So they're only talking the difference between certainty and uncertainty, which is okay. All right, school theory's argument. Let's distinguish first order credences about whether the defendant is guilty from second order credences about the permissibility of one's own first order credences. According to permissivism, there is a range of permissible first order credences. Suppose Matt considers the evidence and becomes certain that the rational permissible range for the defendant's guilt is no wider than 0.3 to 0.7. Call this the range, that is, the range of first order credences that Matt thinks with credence above 0 might be permissible. It will do no harm to assume that this is indeed where all the permissible range actually is. Yeah, I mean, so you can put bounds on what you think is reasonable or in a certain, not out of like, not crazy. You can be like, it's probably going to be within this range. Fine. Scolti's argument focuses on the question of how confident the agent should be that credences at the edge and at the center of the range are permissible. We can reconstruct Scolti's argument as follows. 1. For credence at the boundary of the range, the agent should not be certain that it is permissible. 2. For credence at the center of the range, the agent should be certain that it is permissible. 3. It is irrational to have a credence that you think might be impermissible rather than a credence that you are certain is permissible, that is dominated credence. Therefore, 4. It is irrational to have credence at the edge of the range. The argument applies to any range, so 4 contradicts the most plausible version of permissivism. Okay. I mean, okay. But, like, you can just define ranges slightly differently. They're like, where, like, I guess you could have a very steep drop-off, like a very steep one. So it would be like, it's the one at the edge. It's like, yeah, if you move any farther out, it's crazy, but where it is, it's not. It's like it's bivalent. It's either true or false in this case. But like being close to being false, as long as you're not false, you're okay. So it's like I'm not so sure that this may just be a mathematical artifact about how they're talking about stuff. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and so that violates permissible, saying there is some range such that any credence in that range is permissible. Yeah, again, how do you mathematically call this? Because being at the range, the edge of the range might not be that bad. It might be actually very likely. It's just that if you go any farther than that, it gets bad. All right. Author grants that 3, so they will not discuss it farther. What's 3? It's a rational of a credence that you think might be impermissible than a credence you think is permissible. Yeah, you don't want to have impermissible credences. You don't want to have beliefs that you think are bad, but then you hold on to them. Okay, the author will argue that the permissivist should deny either 1 or 2. Agents should be certain that all credences in the range are permissible, deny 1, or they should be less than certain whether any are, deny 2. And see that? I didn't deny either of those when I was arguing. I was saying your mathematics is bad. Why are you using a smooth mathematical curve, as if you could move a little bit farther on the range? It's like, no, being at the edge, it could be fully true. It's like there's only 2 options in this case, true or false, and so it just drops immediately once you get off the true plateau onto the false one. It's like, that's it. So I like the technical conception here. I find very strange because they're trying to assign smooth mathematical functions to this. That's what it sounds like to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Someone tell me I'm wrong. But it's like, if you just got true or false, then there's always going to be the spot right at the edge where there's going to be a gap. Like, not really a gap. There is no gap. That's the whole point. It's like, it's precipitous. Now, if you have a gap, then you're doing something else, and you're paraconsistent or something. Okay. So a diagram might be useful. The problem case for permissivism is where credences in the center of the range have second order credence that they are permissible of 1. Yeah, so you like the one in the middle because they're not near the edges, and the credences at the boundary of the range have a second order credence that they are permissible of less than 1. We get something like the following shape. Can I see a version with the diagrams? Is there no diagrams? Oh, I don't. Maybe there's diagrams here. Oh, interesting. So this one, this looks like a note from a reviewer here. Can I see a version with the diagrams? I wonder if they're at the edge at the end. It's on page 12. Are there pictures at the end? Dag nabbit. Oh wait, here. Yeah, here we go. So it is at the end. Figure 3. This might be figure 1 or something. Yeah. So first order credence. So yeah, if you're in the middle, which is right over here, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. But if you're at this edge right over here, you're feeling kind of nervous that you don't like being over there. And so that's good. So that's like this is the whole point. But like I was saying, if you have like a something like this, like where they're clearly going in figure 4, where there's just like nothing, it's just a line, then maybe you can make this work. Okay. Yeah. The agent is certain that credences between 0.4 and 0.6 are permissible and uncertain whether credences between 0.3 and 0.4 and between 0.6 and 0.7 are permissible. Yeah, so that's why you have that sort of like this nice curvy thing, which I'm complaining about. It shouldn't be curvy. This combination of certainty and uncertainty is what generates the problem for permissivists. I will argue that the permissivists can and should avoid this combination. They just need to pick a side. Either be certain that all the credences are in the range are permissible, or be uncertain whether any of them are. Yeah, so it's like that's it. Just make it a hard break. To be clear about the dialectic, there is a logical space for the intermediate position Scolti's attacks, according to which agents are certain that some first-order credences are permissible and uncertain that others are, but I will argue that this position is implausible and unmotivated. Alright, so 4. Strong modesty. Deny 2. The most plausible permissivist position is to hold that agents should be less than certain whether any first-order credence is permissible. This follows from the following principle. Strong modesty. Quote, for any set of total evidence E and hypothesis H, for any credence C in H, says any belief that you have in some hypothesis, it is irrational to be certain that C, your belief is permissible. Is irrational to be certain that your credence, your belief, is permissible. Yeah. So if it's merely a belief, being absolutely certain about it is not a modest thing. You're not being humble at that point. And so strong modesty says you can't be 100% certain about your beliefs. That's fine. Otherwise, they'd be knowledge. Applying this to the example above, strong modesty entails that Matt should be less than certain that any given credence is in the range. This makes 2 false. Recall that 2 says that for a credence at the center of a range, the agent should be certain that it is rational. The diagram of Matt's credence might look something like this. The key point is that the second order credence is always below 1. Okay, so we're on page 5 now, and if we go down here to the second one, let's see. I'm not sure. This one or this one. Yeah, so like you're just saying it's always below 1. Let's see, where is it? Oh, this one here. So yeah, you can see there's a little gap right here. Like this little gap in this area. You should never actually be 100% certain of your beliefs, otherwise they'd count as knowledge. And so 1's up here, and there's a little bit of space right in here that you can't actually get to being absolutely certain. The agent is not certain that any credence is permissible, so no credence is dominated. Yeah, so you don't absolutely believe certain ones, and so you can just be like, all right, well, all of them are a little shaky. Author says it isn't crucial to the dialectic that strong modesty is true. Indeed, the next section assumes that it isn't. And still, I think strong modesty is very plausible. In the Bayesian framework, certainty always remains despite any evidence that may arrive, yet surely Matt can discover that he is mistaken about what the evidence supports. He might believe that he has made such mistakes in the past, and even if not, he may discover that he is under the influence of a drug that disrupts his ability to make simple inferences, yet is undetectable from the inside. If any of you have ever been drunk enough or tired enough, this can happen. You think you're reasoning well, and you realize later that you were an idiot, but you can't tell when you are in that state. Leaving this open as an epistemic possibility requires that he has not been certain that any first-order credences are permissible as required by strong modesty. How might one argue that Matt should be certain that some credences are permissible? A referee imagines that an infallible oracle comes down from the sky and tells Matt that point 0.5 is in the range. Should Matt be certain? I don't think so. For Matt to be certain of what the infallible oracle says, he would have to be certain that the oracle was indeed infallible. I see no way for Matt to be rationally certain of that. A heavenly voice from the sky claiming to be an infallible oracle could be a malevolent demon. Indeed, anything the infallible oracle does to convince Matt that he speaks the truth could be mimicked by a malevolent demon. This type of worry is the source of the Cartesian skepticism. I mean, this is getting published in Mind. Do we need to fucking worry that a malevolent demon is referencing Descartes? Who was I just listening to? We were talking about what? What was I talking about? On Aris's stream last night, Aris was talking. If anyone doesn't know, Aris is the first link there. Aristotle, another streamer here on Twitch. Go give him a follow. But he was saying, look, in the old school days when they'd just assume you spoke 4 different languages and they just start like quoting things in French without translation. They'd quote things in German without translation. They'd quote things in Latin and not translating. And that's like part and parcel of, some disciplines. You know who your audience is. You know the audience is familiar with certain literature. And if you quote this stuff, you don't need to have a translation for it. It's just taking up extra space. Now, here's the thing. This is published in one of the top philosophy journals in the world. Do we have to worry that, like, no one has heard of Descartes? Like, seriously? Like, that is just confusing to me that this sort of thing is noted here. Like, did the reviewer be like, you didn't quote Descartes here? I don't get it. Okay. My griping aside, are there any hypotheses of which we should be certain? There are 2 main candidates: logical mathematical truths and hypotheses about our own experience. All right, so subjective and ones that are like true by definition. The most important point to note here is that certainty about such hypotheses is compatible with the position of this section. Permissivists can allow that we should be certain of some hypotheses while maintaining that we should always be less than certain of hypotheses about the permissibility of credences. Still, let's consider the thesis that agents should be certain that some credences are permissible. This involves a kind of immodesty. I will argue in the next section that on the most plausible way to reject strong modesty, premise 1 is false. Okay, so we're going to deny number 1. Number 1 being, what was number 1? Okay, yeah, for credence at the boundary of the range, an agent should not be certain that it's permissible. Yeah, and I actually kind of agree with that. That's what I was saying, was that their mathematics was garbage. And why should being at the edge, like what actually means being at an edge, should not make any difference. As long as it's in the range, it should be in the range. That's all that should make a difference. Okay, so strong modesty, deny 1. Assume strong modesty is false. Thus, there are some credences that the agents should be certain are permissible. This is most plausibly motivated by the thought that we have a strong form of access to the principles of rationality. However, if this access justifies certainty that some credences are permissible, then by symmetry it seems it will also justify certainty that some credences are impermissible. For example, if I have sufficiently direct and indubitable access to the principle of rationality to be certain that, say, 0.5 is in the permissible range, it seems that this direct and indubitable access to the principles of rationality would justify certainty that, say, 0.1 is outside the permissible range. The result is the following. Strong immodesty. For any set of total evidence E and any hypothesis H, for any credence C, it is rationally required to be certain whether C is permissible. I don't know if I believe this. I don't think it follows because, again, this is assuming one or the other. Just because you say something is rationally permissible does not follow that if something is outside that, it's impermissible. It means it's possibly impermissible, but you may not know what side it's in. So there might be a gap in this. Especially if you're talking about non-logical things, like maybe logically you think things are true or they're going to be false. That's it. And of course there's people who even disagree with that. But if you think you're not talking about something logical, then maybe it can be it's undecided. There are undecided things out there, and then it's like, well, okay, if it's not a logical thing, maybe we just don't know. And it's like you don't know where it's going to land yet. So the idea that like we are guaranteeing certain things to be impermissible seems very strange to me right here. All right, but anyway, let's just take it on. Let's follow along with the author. It follows that Matt will be rationally certain that credences on the boundary of the range, for example, point 3, are permissible. Okay, yeah, so point 1 is impermissible, and then point 3 is still permissible. But now it follows that 1 is false. Recall that 1 says the agent should not be certain that the credence at the boundary is permissible. Yeah, so that means if you're getting close to it, that doesn't matter. So if we endorse strong immodesty, then we have to reject premise 1. The agent should be certain for all credences in the range that they are permissible, and should also be certain for all credences outside the range that they are impermissible. Yeah, this is one of those things where I may disagree with the setup, but like, look, you may know if as long as you're up to a certain point that you're okay. Getting a little farther than that, it's a bad idea. And then at a certain point, you're definitely outside the realm of possibility. It's like, okay, that would be a more natural way of describing it. It's like, yeah, you're good for a while. Anything up to a limit, you say, yeah, up to there. Once you get past there, shaky, and then after that, you've fallen off the cliff. But like, there's that shaky area, but you know before you get to the shaky area. It's not that crazy to know such a thing. All right. Scoltes noticed this way of blocking her argument, but responds that this defense of permissivism applies to ideal agents who are certain of which first-order credences are permissible, does not apply to non-ideal agents, such as ourselves, assuming we are uncertain of which first-order credences are permissible. And this conflicts with one motivation from permissivism, that having a unique rational credence is too demanding for our non-ideal agents. Indeed, there is such a conflict, but I will argue that this is a motivation the permissivists should reject. Distinguish two purported motivations for permissivism. 1. Relaxed rationality. A unique rational credence is too demanding for the concept of rationality. And 2. Relaxed agents. A unique rational credence is too demanding for non-ideal agents. Scoltes writes, epistemic permissivism is about ordinary agents like you and me with all our human limitations. Permissivism is a populist epistemology, a view for ordinary folks. Impermissivists ignore the realities of our actual cognitive lives. Permissivists don't. End quote. Clearly, Scoltes has in mind the motivation of relaxed agents. Given this motivation provided by relaxed agents, it would indeed be odd if permissivism ends up applying only to ideal agents. But permissivism is not really about non-ideal agents. It is about the relation between evidence and hypothesis. Recall the definition. Given some set of total evidence, there are some hypotheses which do not have a unique rational credence. There is no reference to agents or non-ideality here. So relaxed agents cannot motivate permissivism. All right, so these were the pictures. I wonder why they're stuck here. Oh, this is Microsoft Word, and they put the pictures in a weird spot. That's amazing. That's kind of hilariously bad. Like, because I was thinking that this was the end. This isn't the end. This is just the wrong spot. Thank you, like, whatever. I shouldn't bash Microsoft Word. This is just a Microsoft Word-ish movement of pictures that, like, it has no rationality. That's hilarious. Okay. Scoltes' discussion shows that we should focus on relaxed rationality, which can motivate permissivism. Yeah, so you shouldn't be so hard on rationality, not relaxed agents. So, see, up here it was the agent that was relaxed, and down here it is the rationality that needs to be relaxed. We're not, like, our rationality doesn't give us very fixed beliefs, like very, like, exactly 0.3. Granted, our rationality doesn't give us any numbers, whether they're relaxed or not. But, like, they think that you can describe it in, maybe a range or something. Not that I think is a whole lot better, but maybe it's slightly better. Okay, one might still be troubled by the picture that emerges. Given strong immodesty, agents should be certain that the range starts precisely at 0.3 and stops precisely at 0.7, so second-order credences look like a rectangle which jumps vertically from 0 to 1 at the first-order credence of 0.3 and falls vertically at 0 at 7. That's this one here. So this is what I was saying. You have something that jumps up and then jumps down. And you have no problem as long as you're on this top plateau. And as soon as you get off that plateau, you get, it's 0. Okay. And they're saying, okay, the problem is going to be like zoom in right on this spot. That's, that spot exactly. And that's the argument here, that there's a hard break and you have to know where that is. Yeah. Okay. Is this odd situation a reason to reject permissivism? I will argue that it is not. We only get this odd situation from the conjunction of permissivism and strong immodesty, and strong immodesty is odd enough all on its own. Strong immodesty implies that agents should be second order certain for all first order credences, whether they are permissible. I will argue that strong immodesty leads to odd results. Yeah, I mean, this is like you're saying you're absolutely certain. Yeah, you could drop off being one, or you could also say, look, there's a little bit of a curvature over here, and as long as you're on the flat part, you're sufficiently far away from like this. Like you give yourself a little bit of space near the edge, you're all right. And whatever a little bit of space means, of course, you'd have to make something up, but you could hand wave that one, I think. I mean, I guess maybe not. Maybe you can't do that in this situation. I don't think you can, because that would be like the same one as that like curved thing up there. But still, it's like you could say it drops off precipitously. You're just not entirely sure where it is. As long as well, how would you do that then? Yeah, they're gonna have to argue differently. That's where they're gonna deny their strong immodesty, which is okay, because the immodesty thing says you don't know anything. It's also too strong on its own. Okay, one reason to deny that ideal agents are certain that any credences are rational comes from Williamson's thesis that agents might not know what their evidence is. But I think there are problems with strong immodesty without Williamson's controversial assumptions, as we saw briefly in the last section. All we need is the assumption that an ideal agent might not be certain that they are ideal. Indeed, there are many things ideal agents can be mistaken about. Suppose an ideal agent is told by a usually reliable informant that the sky is green. If this is their only source of information about the sky, they will rationally but falsely believe the sky is green. Now suppose that an ideal agent is told falsely by a usually reliable informant that they have ingested a drug that disrupts their reasoning, making them susceptible to rational error, but that is undetectable from the inside. Such an ideal agent should doubt that they are ideal. So if they have a credence of 0.5 in some hypothesis, then their second order credence that 0.5 is rational should be less than 1. Now consider the agent who has been told no such thing. Nevertheless, they should allow the epistemic possibility that they have ingested such a drug and not been told about it. So they should not be certain that they are rational. I mean, yeah, this is like, okay, maybe you're dreaming or something. Like maybe you're a little out of your head that day. That's fine. Those who endorse strong immodesty will reject the reasoning of the last paragraph. They hold instead that ideal agents should always be certain that they are ideal. My point is not that such philosophers are wrong. My point is that such philosophers are committed to some odd views. For example, that you should ignore evidence that you are not ideal. Unsurprisingly, further odd views will follow, one of which may be the rectangular-shaped distribution above. Indeed, if we combine strong immodesty with uniqueness, the width of the rectangle collapses to 0, leaving a shape that looks just as odd to me. Okay, so what this is a spike. That's what this is. So there's only one thing, which is the actual thing you should be believing, that because all the ones at the edge, you don't care, and then so you'd get down to the last one. So you could do some sort of iterative process. How close are you to the edge? Well, you move a little from this one, and how close from the other side? You move a little bit in, and eventually you track yourself in, and you get it's like one of these things. Like you're on this beam. Do I have something like flatter? And but what you do is you just sort of walk yourself in from both ends, and eventually you get to the middle. All right, and so this is where you'd end up. Like you'd be in the middle, and then you have this spike right there, and that's what this is. And so that's what you could do. That if you were strongly immodest, you could keep edging yourself away from one of the edges, and you'd be somewhere in that thing, because the edges were always bad. But again, if you're uncertain, you drop slightly under the 1, so you don't completely believe all the things you say, then you don't have to worry about this stuff. You don't need, you say, yeah, I'm pretty sure about all this stuff in this range, and that's all. Okay, so the author's suggestion is that if you are bothered by the rectangular shaped distribution, you need not blame permissivism, you can blame strong immodesty. Conclusion. Scholte's argument against permissivism depends on some credences in the range being certainly permissible and other credences being merely possibly permissible. I have argued that permissivists can deny either that the agent should be uncertain whether any credence in the range is permissible, deny 2, or the agent should be certain that every credence in the range is permissible, deny 1. Permissivism is not refuted. Scholtes suggests that we should understand permissivism as an epistemology for non-ideal folk. One might also think that strong modesty is a principle for non-ideal folk. Perhaps the uncertainty which these principles suggest is correct for us, but not for ideal agents. I have argued that these thoughts are misguided. Permissivism and strong modesty both concern the connection between evidence and hypothesis, making no reference to agents. Uncertainty, even about rationality, may be a rational ideal, not merely a regrettable state for non-ideal agents. Okay, so what do we think about this? Let me know in chat if anyone... I know what epistemology does to people. I also know what metaphysics does to people. It shuts them up because most people are just like, why are you bothering? This is not terrible as far as epistemology goes. It's a nice epistemology paper saying, look, one of the reasons this is nice, even though I've been crapping on it this entire time, is that these graphs down here, these are actually not, this is the payoff here. You get these nice pictures. And why does this make it worthwhile? There are a lot of people who could say, look, I'm not going to actually put numbers on this. But you could say, look, I kind of believe like the, bell curve in like different shapes, like whatever it is. That was unbelievably bad. Yeah, so like, if you were like, you got like the nice bell curve or whatever. Oh, wow, I forgot you could write like this on this thing. Huh. Okay, that's cool. I forgot I could like draw like this. But like, yeah, so like you say, this is also a terrible bell curve, but like, so you could have like a very shallow curve. You could have one that's a bit more like, I can't draw. I never could. Yeah, but like you get the point. You can have one that's a lot more, a lot less variance on it. But, so like this is the thing. You don't have to put numbers on it. You could think of it like as a general shape. And then once you do that, you don't have to be talking about these like credences with numbers that like, oh, you're falling off if you get like just past 0.3 or whatever. Like that, I find that ridiculous. But if you start thinking, okay, you've got like a shape like this, and maybe you don't want to be in like this area, like you don't want to be past like here or here. You only want to be in like this top spot in like this area. You only want to be here and higher. So it's like you want to be in that area. Involve yourself. How you been? How you been, my friend? My good man. I'm doing okay so far. Like I'm actually feeling okay in general. Which was terrible. And I mean terrible because I decided I'd read some epistemology. And I just, oh yeah, you were sick. I hope you're doing better. I decided to read some epistemology. Epistemology just pisses me off. But like I'm in a good mood, so I'm just laughing at it. Like who actually thinks their thoughts are like this, where you drop off at exactly 0.7? Like you go right over the 0.7, you're at 0.71, and oh, that's impossible. But 0.7 is perfect. Like no one in their right mind thinks this way. But I'm saying, look, this paper isn't terrible because you could like translate this into other stuff. Like say you have like sort of like, a range of thoughts of something, and you want to say, look, once you start getting a little bit past some of them over here, like once you're into this area over here, you'd be like, no, not that stuff and not this stuff. And then you can start making sort of like the similar graph. You want to be in like this range over here. And then you can start to say, okay, the pictures. And so that means that this paper, even though it was kind of narrow and it was really kind of like, I don't care about school thesis, but I mean, clearly other people do, and that's fine. But like, it could be translated to say, hey, look, there is no problem with thinking about a plurality of ideas. Like when you have an idea about something, and a belief, you don't have to have a fixed belief. You can have like a range, and that's not so bad. The idea that you can have a range of how you feel about a beliefs, like how certain you are about it, that's not a crazy thought. Yeah, like I hope you're doing well about yourself. So I was, I didn't see you were streaming yesterday. I felt bad. I was like, oh, I have all my notifications turned off because I don't need any more freaking emails from like Twitch or anybody else. They are defining permissivism as, given some set of total evidence, there are certain hypotheses which do not have a unique rational credence. And that's what I meant by a range. So yeah, there's not a unique rational credence. There's a range of credences that it could fall within. Yeah. So this is kind of how they were doing permissivism. So, I mean, if you are interested in these sorts of things, this is not bad. But, and like I said, the payoff was here where they get to argue that, like, you having a non-unique rational credence, like, say you're kind of towards the top of the bell curve or whatever, then, like, not so terrible.